Get off your ash. That's right, you heard me. Confronting what happened to us in the past in order to understand who we are in the present so we can be who we want to be in the future. It's time to stop allowing what happened to you yesterday to continue affecting what you do and who you are today. This podcast is going to challenge you and push you outside of your comfort zone. So, if you're ready to get off your ash, let's go. Hey everybody, Joe Amaral here, and welcome back to another edition of the Get Off Your Ash podcast. And I'm really excited about my guest today. I've known her for a long time. We've worked together. We co-hosted a national television program here in Canada for many years. She's a tough cookie. She's been through a lot. She has a lot to share, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing what she has to say. So please welcome Cheryl Weber. Well, Cheryl, thank you so much for taking the time to join this crazy titled podcast, Get Off Your Ash. And I know you have, right?
Absolutely. And that's so you that you came up with that. Oh, yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I was saying in the intro that we've known each other for a while now, and we were able to host together for a few years, kind of on and off as I was a guest and part of the ensemble. And then we officially became, me, you, and Maggie John, we became kind of the official hosts of the show. And we had a blast doing that.
It was so fun. And I remember it was like crazy. Like our schedule was crazy. And I remember, I feel like it was before Christmas when you told me you were leaving the show and I started crying. I was like, I just can't take anymore. Joe, don't leave.
Yeah. Those were some long days. And I remember being so confused because we would like tape shows weeks and sometimes a month or two before they happen. So we're celebrating Easter. Then we leave. It's like, it's February. Why
Exactly.
I remember doing that. So it's kind of nice for me, at least, to be out of that world and back into reality here. And yeah, you're right. Get off your ash is definitely, that's the way I talk, because when I was thinking about the book and the content, I knew I wanted to encourage people like to get off your butt, right? Like stop being lethargic and lazy and, and apathetic and get out there and do it. And it was Todd Stahl, Sherry's husband, Sherry Stahl, who we both know, who gave me that title. And that was it. The moment he gave me the title, the book wrote itself, So
well, you definitely have done that in so many ways.
I think a lot of people have done it. They just didn't identify it that way. They would just say they took a risk or they said yes. You'd always say, do it scared.
It's true. Wow, you do remember that.
Well, was that the phrase, do it scared?
Oh, yeah, 1,000%.
Explain that. What is that, Cheryl?
Yeah, Cheryl, not Sherry.
Well, listen, be consistent with your Starbucks coffee cups that you keep posting where they screw up your name all the time.
True. I always have interesting, names. Well, yeah, I think.
Do it scared, yeah.
I think I learned that the hard way. And for me, it really came out of the fact that I always had a desire since I was a little kid to find God's will for my life and live it. And when I was little, I used to put money into the offering, and my parents had a Bible study, and I would wrap it up in a little piece of paper that would say I'd give myself to God. And they thought it was, of course, so cute, but I actually think God took that kind of seriously. And I've just always had this desire to find God's will. Well, walking that out, I mean, it sounds lovely, but actually walking that out is a process of facing your fears. And for me, I was very shy, believe it or not.
It's hard to believe.
Yes. As a matter of fact, when I went away to university, I moved to Oklahoma for university, and I didn't know a soul. And my roommate, when she would introduce me, she would always say, "This is Cheryl, my silent roommate." That was so years later, when she came to visit me and I was I was a reporter for 100 Huntley Street. She was like, who are you? Like, who are you? Like, I literally don't even know who you are. And that's really the work of God in my life. But it's not like one day I just woke up and all of a sudden I could talk to strangers. It was literally saying yes to every opportunity and every door that got open while I was terrified. Like, I think the first 3 years I was on television as a reporter, I don't think I ever slept more than 2 to 3 hours a night the night before I had to be on television. Like, I was literally in my television class. We had to sit in a chair so that people could practice camera, like just, like not even recording, just like zooming in and whatever. And I would sit there shaking, blushing and sweating. Like, I was so terrified of being on a stage, of being on television, of like, I'd sit at to this day, I still, like, if I go to an event, I'll sit at the back.
I get the doing it scared thing. When I was in Bible school, I'd never spoken in front of a large group before, but I felt the call to ministry. And so I went to this Bible school up in Peterborough, Ontario. And because of my last name being Amaral, I was, I think, the second person in the class who had to get up. Yeah, so A, right? You're right in the
I'm
beginning.
W, so I'm always last.
So you got a lot of time to watch what people do. One person went, and then it was me. And you had to go and write your name on this whiteboard, turn around, face your peers, and then they were going to like pick apart your sermon, pick apart your presentation, which was part of the learning process. Hey, you move too much, you mumble, whatever. And I remember going up to the board, Cheryl, and writing my name and thinking, okay, I'm going to turn around and I'm just going to throw up, and then that's going to be the end of it. Having no idea that like over 30 years later, I would be doing this for a living, speaking anywhere from 5,000 people to 15,000 people at a time. But you do it scared. And that's another way of saying getting off your ash, like dealing with the fear of rejection of what people are going to say about, Joe and Cheryl Weber.
Yeah, I think that people think that you do things that you're not scared of, or that God somehow takes the fear away. And maybe for some people he does. And from my experience, it's like doing it despite the fear, not doing it because of the fear. And I think a lot of people are kind of upset with God for not getting them to where they want to be. Mm-hmm. But they're literally sabotaging themselves by closing the doors, by saying kind of excusing themselves from opportunity by saying, oh, no, I couldn't do that. Or and for a lot of us, and I can't speak for men, Joe, but for women, we are plagued by insecurity and not believing in ourselves. I don't know why we're such self-doubters, but I'm sure, and I honestly, I know lots of men who struggle with that as well. So I think it's a human condition where there's always that voice inside of us pointing out all the things that we don't have. And the truth is, there's always somebody better looking than you.
Sure.
Younger or older than you, depending on where you are in life and what you think gets respect. Just, better at what you're trying to do. There's always going to be someone better than you. So if that's how you're judging things, then you're never going to get out there, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, well, you said a couple of things that I know I haven't even sent you the book yet. So I know you haven't read it, but you're quoting from a couple of chapters of the book, like the self-sabotage thing. It's unbelievable how many people do it. Like they fail before they even try. I'm no good. I'm going to flub. I'm going to fail miserably, and everybody's going to see. And so we do that self sabotage kind of a thing. And I don't know, the doing it scared thing. I talked about don't covet. I don't know if I said this when we started taping or when we were chatting before we came on about, don't covet your neighbor's ash. Like you're smiling now and they see you on TV, they see me on a stage somewhere, like, wow, I wish I had it as easy as Cheryl did. Look how natural she is. She's never had a problem in her life, probably. Look at her. She's blonde, she's on television, she's got everything handed to her. She's had no issues. How could I ever do what she's doing? And you're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Do you know my life, right?
I think sometimes too, when you're called to leadership in particular, God takes you through a process of crushing you that is incredibly painful. And it doesn't seem to be just once. I thought maybe once I got through it and I learned those lessons that I'd be good. But, when you have impact and influence on people, so, when people see you, whether you're a boss or a parent or, a profile, the words that you say have way more impact because people give them significance. And if you say the wrong, if you kind of promote the wrong things, or you say things to put people down, or out of your woundedness, you respond poorly, you have the ability to just wreck people's lives in so many ways. Just a careless word, people carry that forward. You'll never amount to anything. One teacher has to only say that once, and kids will carry it into their 50s. Right, wrestling with those words. So I feel like if you have that call in your life in any way to have influence or impact, and I kind of think we all do in one way or the other, God's going to be working on your character, and part of that is suffering. That's what I always say. Like everybody
Yeah.
wants platform. Like I think it's funny how everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame, but from a spiritual perspective, if that's what you're signing up for, you are signing up to a lot of character crushing,
Yeah.
humbling. Like you were speaking just before we started recording about, just the humbling in your own life, how what God's done in
Yeah.
you. That's all part of that process. And it is always painful. I find that's my
Always. I mean, I was going to call you dude because I call everybody dude. And my wife says, don't call women dudes. I'm like, what? It's just, I don't mean anything by it.
I don't
So,
mind it.
okay.
You're
So,
my friend.
dude, what you were saying about, oh, I thought I was just going to go through it once and then kind of get over it. It's like, no, again, I hate to keep referring back to the book, but I do talk about the process of refining, of how you get gold, and how it's a constant process of crushing, sifting, refining, the smelting, the gold, the liquid, the fire, and then again, and then again. And just when you think you've had enough, you got to shake it again. You got to crush it more. There's still some impurities, right? You're doing this what?
But even this morning, I couldn't sleep, so I woke up early, and I've been away for a long time traveling here, so my garden is like choking out, like
Oh,
literally the
okay.
weeds are choking out. So I was like, I'm in a garden, so I'm weeding this morning super early, and I'm just thinking about like how pointless weeding is because like I have a huge backyard with tons of gardens, so it's like I can never catch up, and
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like my heart. It's like I'm
Right.
constantly like thinking about
Yeah.
offense that I've taken, insecurities that I have, fears, judgments, and I'm repenting. And God and I are weeding the garden of my heart. It's like more weeds spring up. Another person hurts your feelings.
Yeah.
You get offended by another person's opinion or someone attacking you or criticizing you, or talking behind your back or whatever it is. Like it's just attitudes that the Lord shows you. It's literally like the weeding of your garden is endless.
You're right. Like I'm not a gardening guy by any stretch of the imagination, but it gets bad enough. You're like, okay, this is embarrassing. I better get back there. The neighbors are going to say, who the heck moved in next door?
Right.
Right. So you go back there, and it's amazing how many sermon illustrations you get while you're weeding, right? Like, oh,
Yes.
you can't just use the the lawnmower to cut off the top because you got to get to the root, right? And if you don't get to the root,
Yes.
right, it's going to come back and it's going to spread. And you have all these sermon ideas, and like you're like, this is pointless. I know I'm going to come back here next week. There's going to be another one here,
Yes. Yeah,
right?
especially if you don't get the root.
Yeah, but
Especially.
but but you got to do it, right? Or else it gets overgrown and crazy.
And
And I mean,
kudos to
sorry,
go ahead.
no, go ahead. Kudos to what?
Kudos to you because
Mm,
that book really came out of you facing some really deep, hard inner
mhm.
pain that you had in your life. And I don't know if people understand how hard that is. First of all, like there's never a day that you're going through your busy, crazy, stressful day thinking, I think tonight I want to deal with my deep psychic inner pain. Like, let's just face everything that's tormenting me
Yeah,
and
yeah,
hurt me. And like dealing with that pain is like, it has to come out. So it hurts coming out, right? Almost as much as it did going in.
yes, ma'am.
And then sexual assault, that's a whole nother level because there's all this shame and identity and
Mhm.
and feeling defiled and feeling there's something broken in you and wrong with you, and there's whole these other layers that you have to face, and then just society, and then you as a man, of course, talking about it, it's a whole nother level
It
because
is.
we assume it only happens to women. So I just want to take a moment and just say
Mhm.
kudos to you for getting off your ash
Yeah,
and doing the really hard work and talking about it, not just
yeah.
doing it, but then actually talking about it. Like that's just huge. I have so much respect for you, Joe.
Well, I appreciate that, Cheryl. I mean, it wasn't an easy thing to talk about, and but I knew that I had to, first of all, for myself, because I was going to lose my mind. I became very suicidal. I talk about it. I even had a plan. I knew how I was going to do it. And I was going to move in that direction because in my mind, the lies I was believing was I had become all those things that people said I was going to become. You're a loser. You're no good. You're damaged goods.
Mm.
You're never going to be fully usable by God. That's always going to be it. And so you start to believe that and you start to live it. You act like it. You start to think like it. And I'll never forget, I was 15 years old, which is a really impressionable stage of your life, and, a man in ministry, said to me, you're never going to amount to anything, you and all you Amarols.
See, one time, one
Harkening
time.
back to what you said. So when you said it, I was like, okay, I'm waiting. I want her to finish her thought, but I want to bring that back up because we don't understand. Like the Bible says that, life and death is in the power of the tongue. And we're talking about, you can kill somebody in emotionally, right? Mentally, spiritually, psychologically.
Yeah.
I've interviewed enough people on TV to know people who have been broken by other people's words.
And I think the hard thing is, when I got a leadership position, I'm still just the person I was last week. But all of a sudden, God was showing me that every careless word that I said, even teasing people, had so much more impact, like nuclear impact, as compared to what happened the week before I had the promotion or the position or, whatever. And a lot of times we don't think a lot of ourselves. Like we don't, we have our own insecurities. We're in our own heads. We're wrestling through our own emotional minefield. We don't really see the impact that we have on other people. So we don't understand that our grumpy day, our pushing people aside because we're in a hurry or task oriented or whatever. All those things are like nuclear bombs going off in other people's lives who are coming with their own filter and pain.
Absolutely. The words that we say, and towards the end, as I was getting ready to finish off the book, you're like, how do you end this thing? And after everything that I've been through and I've shared and talked about and all the experiences, like, what do you do? Okay, so you're dealing with the ash in your life. An ash like in the life of Job was the disappointment in God because he allowed his children to be killed, for all his animals to be lost, all of his product, his livelihood, everything. And people were talking bad about him. At least he thought they were. And then he he gets to the end of his life and he realizes what he's been doing, and he gets off of that ash, right? And God blesses him. And we know that it's really good. But how do you prevent yourself from going back to the pile of ash? So Cheryl's having a great day and somebody says, oh, did you see that interview? Did you hear what she said? Or did you see what she was wearing or whatever? What happens? Your mind goes right back. Yeah, they told me I wouldn't look good on camera, or they told me, right?
Totally. Oh my gosh, those stories we tell ourselves. That's one thing I've been thinking a lot about for the last 2 years, actually, is the stories that we tell ourselves are the things that are kind of molding our lives, and really reflecting on what are the stories I tell myself about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then how does God want to rewrite those stories? And it's a hard process, because even like you said, when you know better, like, oh, I'm a child of God. Like lately I've been working on the story about that God is generous and that he is thrilled when I'm financially blessed. Mm-hmm. I had a parent who was very cheap with me, like literally from the age of like 8. Can I borrow a quarter? When are you going to pay that back? And with what interest? And paying rent for my first job at 16, like just, and with well-intentioned, like not a mean, not a mean thing, but just wanting me to be responsible. But then understanding the generosity of God is so hard for me. And so I've been telling myself that, because when I hear it, it brings tears to my eyes, because it's not a lived reality for me. So, but I'm working on it. Right. I'm working on changing the story that I'm telling myself, so that my expectation, my hope is going in a different direction than, suffering or lack, which is kind of more what I've known working in ministry a little bit. I mean, not in a crazy way, not what you and I see, but, like, God, I know you have more for me in this area. And I want to live in a different mindset and reality of you.
I mean, the conversation we have with ourselves, the voice we have in our head, I don't know about you. I can only speak for myself, but I'm much meaner to myself than I am to anyone else.
Yes.
Cheryl can say, Joe, you're this, and Joe, oh, you're that. I'm like, I'm kind of feeling like a piece of garbage right now, because I'm remembering stuff that I thought. I remember stuff that I've gone through in my healing process. And Joe, you're so great. No, I'm garbage. And I don't know why we do that, but we do that.
Oh yeah. And people can tell you whatever they tell you, but it's like you deflect it. You internally deflect it or it doesn't go in. And I mean, part of that for me has been a good survival skill, because people are fickle. Let's be honest. They love you one
Sure.
day and hate you the next. And so
Yeah.
for what I do, if I were taking it in for every criticism and compliment, I would be on this crazy roller coaster. Like, I'm awesome, I'm terrible, I'm awesome, I'm terrible. And I'd be neurotic. But God showed me that like 20 years ago. He showed me, like, you have a different ruler that you measure yourself by. Like, I'm kind of known, I hope, for being somewhat grace-filled, for people. I hope, but toward myself, mean as anything. I just have such high expectations for myself.
So how do we fulfill what Jesus said to do? Like, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Hmm.
So in my mind, like it's easy to be nice to you. It's easy to be nice to people that I meet, at Walmart when I'm shopping. It's really easy. But when I'm in my head and I'm by myself, I can be really not nice to myself. And I'm like, Lord, how can I love Cheryl? How can I love my wife? How can I love these people in my life if I can't really, truly love myself? And that's part of getting off your ash. There's a chapter called Get Your Head Out of Your Ash, because what happens is, I'm sorry, we keep going back to the pile of ash, which is the doubt, that thing that guy said to me, the thing that person said to you, and our heads, our minds goes right back to that ash. No, you're not that good. Relax. Don't think more of yourself than you ought. And you start to do that. And it's learning to listen to a different voice, to the voice, of healing, to the voice of God, to the voice of those he has put in your life who celebrate your victories, and they walk with you and they rejoice with you. And so, I would say I'm in a much better place today than I was 5 or 6 years ago. But I mean, it's a journey and I don't know when it ends.
I don't know either, because I think, the enemy is always there on your shoulder, like just ready to jump on you. And I think it's interesting that he will tempt you to, like, whatever it is, be grumpy, cross a line, do something wrong.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the second you do it, boom, he's there to tell you how awful you are. So one minute he's luring you, and the next minute he's telling you that you're just a terrible person and hopeless, and God can never use you, and blah, 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 blah. And, I mean, one good thing to know, I think, is that God uses us despite us, not because of us.
You're
So
like reading my mind.
I've had like a million conversations with God where he's said something to me about, like, I'm going to do this through you, or I have this for you, or whatever. He's always speaking. He's always living in the future, I find, and speaking to the person you're not yet. And so I always go, why? Like, why would you do that for me? Like, I don't understand. Like, why me? Why pick me? I mean, there's so many more amazing people in the world. And he always says to me, it's not about you. Like, this is just my will. This is my plan. This is what I'm doing. It's not about you. So the second that God speaks vision to you, you always look to yourself to see what you have to bring to the table, your value, your worth, or your skills or abilities. But the nature of God is that he likes to put you in situations where you're over your head, so that you don't rely on yourself, and that you're completely desperate for him to come through. That's literally his modus operandi. And that's why you have to
100%.
face the fear, right? Because if you're saying no to those times where God's trying to put you in over your head so that he can do something through you that people will know it's not Cheryl, that's got to be God, then you're never going to live. Yeah. You're never going to fulfill your purpose or destiny.
Yeah, I love that, man. When I left, television and, the kind of the big church arena, and was getting ready to launch out into whatever was next, I didn't have a plan. I didn't know. But my prayer was, I said, God, give me a ministry that I can't do without you. When people look at it, they're like, hey, I know Amaral. There's no way he did that. He's good, but he's not that good, And where does God send me? One of the poorest countries in the world, with like no infrastructure, where 2.5% of the population have, stable electricity, and, less than 10% have, access to clean water. And God puts me in this crazy place where there's so much, people are so desperate, and they're so filled with a lack of hope. And I look at what God has done in the last 2.5 years, and almost every person, Cheryl, has said to me, wow, look at what God is doing in your life. I'm like, thank you so much for not giving me any credit. I've been overcredited my entire life. It's so nice not to get any credit. No, Joe, we know you suck. There's no way you could do this. And there's something humbling about that, but there's something so beautiful about that God would choose to use me, this bruised vessel who's been through so much, but yet he still uses Joe. He still uses Cheryl. And I don't know, that's such a beautiful thing for me.
I always think of that verse that talks about treasures in jars of clay.
Yeah.
And so like we get upset that we're clay, that we see our cracks and our deformities and our chips and stuff like that in the clay jar. But the whole point is that when we are human, when we fail, when we are weak, all those things, that if we're given over to God and the Spirit within us, that people will see something beyond you. Yeah. And I literally remember this moment. So I've had 4 surgeries in 3 years. It's been a little bit of a rough time.
Yeah.
And the second surgery, I was in the hospital for a month, and I spent the first week throwing up on an abdominal incision, like open surgery, if you can imagine, just all day for a whole week. And I wanted to die at that point. Yeah. And there was a girl in my room it was a bit rough around the edges. She was on her 10th surgery or something. She had Crohn's. But she was so kind to me during that whole time. I got out of the hospital, found out I had an infection, both in the incision and in the surgical site, came back in, saw her, and she said to me, the only time I find peace is when I'm around you. I'm like Job suffering. You know what I mean? I am fighting for my life here. And literally my doctor kept saying to me, everything that happened after the surgery, you're the worst case scenario. After the infection, you're the worst of the worst case scenario. This is me, right? While that's happening, she's like, I only feel peace when I'm around you. And my spiritual antenna went up and I realized it's the Holy Spirit in me. Obviously, I was not ministering. I was not inspirational. I was puking all day. And I was in, incredible pain because I had this surgery, this incision. And, it's it wasn't about me. It's I'm a container for God. And I don't know if you've had this where you've been around somebody who, maybe doesn't have a faith, and you don't even say anything about your faith, and they start apologizing to you for swearing or something
all
like
the
that.
time.
And you're like, I don't care if you swear. I mean, you do you. I'm not judging you, nothing, right? But it literally has nothing to do with what I'm thinking or who I am. It's the Spirit of God in me that they're starting to feel uncomfortable about, I think. Because I'm like, that makes no sense. I don't judge people for that. I don't expect people who are not Christians to act like Christians ever. Doesn't even make logical sense.
Well, I've had great conversations. I've been fortunate to know people that, you might consider to be successful or famous. And I've just become friends with them, and it's totally normal.
I'm one of them, right?
Of course you are.
Okay.
But I was going to talk about a person who wasn't of faith. So you're definitely a person of faith.
Okay. I'm just kidding.
So this person's kind of a big deal. And I gave them one of my teaching DVDs, and they called me up swearing their heads off. This is so effing amazing. I can't effing believe this. This is so effing cool. I never effing knew this about God. And I'm like, I would love to put that on the back of my next book jacket as promotion, right? Because they're being authentically themselves, and they're seeing something in you. And I love that people can be comfortable around you. Because I've known you for a while. You're a really down to earth person, despite the accolades that you've been able to achieve in your career and in your life. And as we kind of wind this down, I just want to ask you two things, Cheryl. Other than, well, okay, I'll say it this way. What do you think is the thing you had to overcome the most to be able, without giving specifics, but to be able to be who you are today? And is it image? Is it self-worth? Is it lies? Is it paranoia? What has been your battle?
Well, I think fear is one. That's huge, because that's
fear
why,
of,
right? Fear of man, probably. Fear of people, fear of, I don't know, being in public, fear of being judged, wanting to be liked. So I think that was huge. And the other thing I would say is forgiveness. I think as a person who really has a compassionate heart, that's why I love to do humanitarian work around the world. My heart bleeds for people, but the downside of that is that you get hurt easily. And in this media business, there's a lot of how to say this, there's a lot of big moves,
Mm-hmm.
uh, power moves,
Yeah. Yeah.
like media is really about money, power, and fame and
Mm-hmm.
sex, I guess, in the world.
Yeah.
So, and Christians are not immune to any of those influences. So
Sure.
there's been lots of stuff over the years that, I felt were undeserved, that were quite mean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just remember this one point thinking to myself, if you really, and I wasn't in a leadership position in this time, but I said, if
Mm-hmm.
you really believe you are called to leadership in this nation, then you are going to have to start taking the Bible seriously. And that means stop excusing yourself for the offense in your heart or the hurt that you're carrying or the
Mm-hmm.
unforgiveness or the judgment
Mm-hmm.
because of what people have done to you. You actually have to do good to those who despitefully use you. You have to forgive 70 times 7. Like, this is literally what God tells us how to live. And yet we excuse ourselves all the time because,
Mm-hmm.
well, what they did was unforgivable. Well, sorry, nothing's unforgivable, and we're called to do it. So I'd say forgiveness is probably maybe even more than fear because
Really?
of its power to hold you up. It's not like I was
Mm.
bitter, but just hurt, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah, just that hurt, just
Okay.
really like, I just remember this one time, 2 years, Joe, of forgiving this person every day who was just doing the meanest things to me. And I remember at the end of that time, God said to me, okay, forgiveness isn't just a decision, it's an action. So I want you to do something to bless this person. I had 2 chances to really serve and bless this person who literally didn't know like how
Oh,
much I was
yikes.
wrestling inside with this person. And then at the end of that time, they got fired actually. And
Okay.
people were like rejoicing. They were buying donuts. They were singing "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead."
Oh,
I'm
no.
not kidding. And I remember all that I felt was
Yeah.
compassion for that person. And I thought that is a work of the Holy Spirit in my life.
Yeah. That's growth.
But it was a daily like praying for that person and forgiving them every day for 2 years because the hits kept on coming, right? Like you make the forgiveness and then they do something else. And then you're like right back to where you were again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that is huge.
Okay. Man, those pesky Bible verses, 70 times 7 and forgive those. Really, is there like a Bible version that kind of skips over that and just gets to the stuff that I relate to and I like,
Like
but
you must have had to do that over your abuse. Like that must have been part of your healing process. Must have been like some serious forgiveness work.
I mean, you have to identify forgiveness. I think that you have to, is that the right word, identify? You have to describe, like, what do you mean by forgiveness? Some people say forgiveness means, oh, just letting it go and dismissing what happened and it doesn't matter. No, no, that's not forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is acknowledging this happened. This was a horrible thing that was done to me, but forgiveness detaches me from being constantly weighed down by what they did or by what they said. So forgiveness, in some senses, is more for me than it is for them because it sets me free. So I forgave, and so I was able to let go, and like a balloon, just the balloon's still there, but it's getting further and further and further away from me. And the more space I'm able to put between me and what happened, just the lighter I feel, and the more joy begins to come back. Hey, there are days where the darkness hits you like a sack of bricks to the side of the head, and you're back on your ash pile, and you're back on the woe is me and the why me God. But thank God that there are more days where you're like, oh, Lord, thank you for everything I've gone through, the good and the bad, because my life is like, and your life, all of our lives are like a recipe. And the final product won't be what it is without all of those ingredients, even the sour stuff sometimes, even the strong stuff, even the bitter stuff. That's all got to be put together to get that unique taste that makes us who we are.
Mm. I agree with you 90%, but there's 10% that I've experienced that I feel like forgiveness is also for them. Even if they don't know that you've forgiven them,
Mhm.
I believe there is a spiritual thing that happens when you hold someone in unforgiveness. I feel like you're holding them in spiritual bondage where they can't change or be set free, or God is restricted in their
Mm.
life, because I believe there's power in bitterness and judgment and unforgiveness. I do. And
Yeah.
I know that society says it's only for us, and I think that's true. And it, like
Mhm.
studies show, it helps our health, our physical, literally our physical health improves when we forgive. But I do believe that there's something about giving people the gift that you've been given, that
Mm,
undeserved grace that they don't deserve. I mean, that's the whole point of grace, is like,
yeah.
you don't deserve it, because I didn't deserve it. And I don't deserve it every day when God forgives me. So I don't know. These are just my
Yeah.
thoughts.
Listen, it's a tough thing, but we're called to forgive, and whatever the ramifications of that are. And I guess kind of the last thing I want to have you address the audience with is, okay, somebody's watching this because I'm going to tag you in it. Oh, I know Cheryl. I've been watching her for years. I read her book. I've seen her speak. I want to hear what she has to say. So somebody's watching this today. They're having like just a wicked bad day. They're sitting on a big old, can you see that big old pile of ash, and there's hurt, and there's fear, and there's anger, and there's bitter, all kinds of stuff there, saying, yeah, easy for you to say, Cheryl, you're on TV. Easy for you to say, Joe, you're a writer. Easy. What do you say to somebody who's watching this going, I want to, but I'm so scared to get off, because at least on this pile, I know who I am. I'm
Mm.
the angry person. That's okay. At least I know how to adapt my personality to be that person. If I get off of this and I got to rip that mask off of me, that's like attached itself to my face, it's part of me, and this is how they see me, it's going to hurt when I take it off. But is it worth taking it off? What do you say to the person who's thinking about that today?
Well, obviously, I do think it's worth taking it off. I mean, change is hard, and it hurts. And I think one of the big lessons I learned pretty early on in my spiritual walk is that giving up has been the most powerful spiritual lesson I've ever heard. And what I mean is, like, saying to God, I can't change myself.
Mm,
Maybe today that person starts by saying, I don't want to change, but I want to be willing to change.
mm,
Or I don't I don't have the power to change myself. Like, these things have molded me into this person, this angry or whatever.
yeah.
Help you change me, God. I like literally recognizing that I can't do it. Sometimes it's just exhausting to try to keep doing the right thing, changing
Oh,
yourself,
yeah.
all of that. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to say, I can't, God, I can't do it. And like, literally, with those times when I've turned to God and I've said, God, I can't become the woman that you want me to be. I can't fulfill a calling on my life. I just keep failing. Like, I
Mhm.
give up. And then it's like, God's like, okay, finally, like, now I can move, So maybe that person just today says,
Yeah.
God, I can't change. I can't even want to change. So please, you come and do what needs to be done in me. And I think that opens a door that starts you on a journey that may not be like instant, but my
Mhm.
goodness, it can completely transform your life. And yes, 1,000% worth it. 1,000%.
I think it's so important. You said a lot of things there that resonated with my personal experience, because I wore the mask for so long. I mean, you knew me in my heyday. I was the funny guy. I was the loud guy doing funny stuff on set, always, because I had to keep my mind busy, Cheryl, because if I let it slow down for too long, it would go to the darkness. So I got to stay busy. I got to write. I got to travel. I got to do jokes. And I remember it was our 25th wedding anniversary where I said, I need to talk to my wife. I need to let her know why I've become the way I've become, and all the changes I've been going through and what's been happening. And I confessed everything that my body was doing to me, my mind was doing to me in this process. And I'll never forget, it was the cutest thing. It's like, when you talk to a puppy and they do that cute little head cock, it's just, she looked at me like that. I'm like, what are you doing? She goes, there you are.
Wow.
She goes, there you are. I haven't seen you in 5 years. And I became so good at becoming someone else that she actually hadn't seen the one she had married for 5 years. And she goes, there you are.
Wow.
And the lie was, if I show people who I really am, they're going to reject me. And I found the opposite to be true. People are so gracious and filled with joy, saying, I'm so thankful you got off your ash. I'm so thankful that you didn't let that swallow you up and you didn't fall into defeat. And so I'm just so thankful that you've been, willing to come on here, because, we've worked together, but a lot of times you're doing the interviewing. So to be the interviewee, thanks for being willing to be on the other side of the camera, and for sharing. And you said a lot of stuff. And so for people who are watching this or listening, I'm going to encourage you to go back and listen to it again or watch this again, because we hit on a lot of things that I think you could spend 20 minutes talking about those points. But hey, it's a podcast and we're just, we're moving along. But I just want to thank you for your openness and your honesty and your willingness to share, some of, your pile of ash with us. You got to watch how you word that.
Oh,
Right?
goodness. You know what? When we, as leaders, share our challenges, insecurity, weakness, experiences, takes away everyone else's excuse, right? Because, oh, I thought God just used Joe because Joe was perfect. All of a sudden it's like, well, if God can use Joe when he has this, and this, then all my excuses go away. So I'm a passionate believer about opening up our lives and just being honest, because all of us are being used despite us, not because of us. When you know that, there's a rest in that, I think.
Yeah. Well, vulnerability is key. And thank you for being that today. And I just want to thank everybody who has taken the time to, listen and stay through this whole episode. Even though we laughed a lot, we hit on some, darker things and some deeper things. And the hope and the prayer of the show, and I say in the intro, is we want to push you outside of your comfort zone. We're not just going to stroke your ego and say, no, it's good, it's fine to live in defeat, it's okay. No, it's not. You were created for more, and we want you to be more, right?
Yes.
And so we want you to get off your ash. So we rehearse this, and we're going to do it right. And so I'm Joe Amaral.
I'm Cheryl Weber. We're reminding
you to
get
off your ash. That was brutal, but they get the point. We hope that you will get off your ash. Cheryl, thank you so much for being my friend. Thank you so much for being on today and sharing your story. I appreciate you.
I so enjoyed our conversation. I'm so thankful for your friendship and just cheering for you so much, your work in Liberia and everything else God is using you for.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope we'll have a coffee soon. Okay.
All right. Deal. Starbucks.
Done. Sherry. However they write your name. Now, we're ending, but why do they always mess up your name? Like, okay, for people who don't know, follow Cheryl on Instagram or Facebook. She's always traveling, and every time she goes to an airport and she orders a coffee, like, it's not even close sometimes. Like, I get Sherry, that's close, but you get like the weirder spellings. What is it?
Right? I don't know what it is, but it's only at airports. Like Starbucks, my local Starbucks is fine, but at airports, I don't know. I think people probably, there's a ton of diversity in Toronto or around the world, and they have different spellings of things. You know what I mean? They hear it differently. Like Cheryl wouldn't be a common name, like in Hong Kong, for example.
Right.
So some of it happens overseas, but a lot of it happens right here in Toronto. And I just think people come from different languages. That's their first language, and they hear it in a totally different way.
I think it's funny.
Every time my Starbucks coffee comes, I can't wait to see what it's going to say.
Well, let's do this right. Thank you, Cheryl Weber, for being on the program today.
Thank you, Joe Amaral the first.
Thanks so much for joining us on today's podcast. We hope you found it informative and encouraging. For more information about Get Off Your Ash or to order the book, you can visit www.getoffyourash.today or just search it out on Amazon.